Ello Yuchub. What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today I want to talk about Athlean-X's recent video, You Can't Be Lean, Strong, and Natural. Now, I'm not disagreeing with Jeff here today. Shocker, I know. I think that you can be lean, strong, and natural. Well, it kind of depends on how you personally define strong, but whatever, that's kind of a relative thing. But in watching Jeff's video, I do have some fundamental disagreements with the process that he lays out for how you guys should go about trying to achieve that goal. The goal can be achieved, but I think that the best path forward is not really the one that he discusses in his video. And honestly, I think I'm a pretty good candidate to discuss this topic because I satisfy most of these requirements, at least by most people's standards, right? I've squatted 530 pounds, deadlifted 585, bench 315, and strict overhead press 200 pounds, among many other things. And all those lifts were done between about 155 pounds to 165 pounds of body weight, some a little bit higher, 170 these days, but I did all those other lifts back in the day as well, right? Now, along with that, when I weighed less, along with that, I've also kind of experienced the whole spectrum here, right? I've been very lean in the past, but with that, I've actually spent most of my time building, for the most part, just slowly building over time, with my body fat fluctuating slightly, probably within the 10 to 15% range the majority of that time. Currently, I believe it's probably a little bit higher than that, though. So I want to give my thoughts on that topic. It's an interesting topic. It's certainly a fun one to pontificate on. I'm not going to splice in too much of Jeff's video here because I kind of want to address the argument as a whole, but I am just going to throw in some of the more pertinent parts just real quick for you guys to kind of get a feel for what I want to talk about, and then I'm just going to run through my whole piece after that. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you find it informative as well. Remember to smash the like button before you go, and leave me some love in the comments down below as well. And just real quick, guys, if you're in the market for a top-notch meal prep company, then be sure to check out FlexPro meals and use code Enkiri Elite for 20% off your order. The link is in the description. The food's legit. It usually arrives in just a couple days. They have a bunch of different high-protein meal options, and it's a really easy and convenient way to help keep your diet and your macros on track. And now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
So you can't be lean, strong, and natural. I disagree with that. Well, we're going to find out today. If you're willing to allow the time, Jesse, as you have, then of course you can have all three, but let's talk about you as a perfect example here. Okay. All right, you certainly have built your strength up. Yeah, for sure. You've gotten yourself to a 515? 515 deadlift. 515 pound deadlift, good to go. Now, you've got yourself here also looking pretty damn lean. Yeah. Meanwhile, you haven't had to sacrifice your leanness to any appreciable degree in the pursuit of that strength. No. Right? And certainly natural. However, I do think that you're going to have to sacrifice time in order to do that. Well, think about how long it took me to get there. So if you're willing to put in that time, then I think these are all achievable. However, we do know that if you wanted to, let's say, pursue strength and maximum strength, there's a lot of research out there that gaining more body fat is going to allow you to start to experience more of those. But if we look back at your scenario again, I have to question maybe the desire to pursue that road at the expense of leanness in this case. Right. Because you're looking at, what are you weighing, 155? About 155, yeah. So this is about a 3.3 times body weight deadlift. 3.3 times body weight deadlift. In any shape or form, that is a strong person. That is a very strong deadlift. And though Jesse could potentially max out even further, it's an indication like other people was willing to let go of his 8-pack. Yeah, start putting on some body fat. Right, could he do more? I'm sure he could, but to what end?
So I see a couple problems with the logic here. For starters, Jesse is built to deadlift anthropomorphically. Right? Is that a word? His structure is that of a deadlifter's build, and that shows with his ability to pick up impressively heavy weights relative to the amount of muscle mass that he's carrying. Conversely, his squat is not nearly as impressive as his deadlift because he's lanky, right? He hasn't really filled out his frame. If he were to fill out his frame, then his squat would have the potential to become much more impressive than it is now. Which leads us to the deadlift is the lift that is least impacted by body weight anyway. That's how you have these fucking Skeletors who can pull 700 pounds, right? And gaining a bunch of extra weight would actually probably not be that much of a boon for his deadlift at this point anyway. I can guarantee you, however, that his squat and his bench press would skyrocket if he did gain a significant amount of weight, but with that, it is possible that his deadlift would stay right about exactly where it is now in spite of weight gain. So what can we make of all that? The point is, basically, your mileage may vary. You can't expect to see the same result that Jesse has seen by creating such minimal changes in your body weight over a period of so many years, because a large part of the reason that Jesse's able to have an impressive deadlift in spite of his modest frame is simply the nature of that lift coupled with the way that he's built. So it's not likely that he'll be able to achieve this on other lifts as well unless he gains more significant amounts of body weight in the future and fills out his frame. Further, and more importantly, because now it pertains to you, it's not likely that many of you guys will be able to achieve the same result that he has achieved on the deadlift unless you also have that same type of deadlifter's build. And if you don't have that build and you choose to stay lanky too, then you're going to have a very difficult time building up your other lifts to impressive levels also, because the additional body weight there becomes a driving force that encourages those lifts to steadily grow. And obviously that's only applicable up to a certain point, but it is generally accepted in strength circles that there's kind of a sweet spot for body weight relative to one's frame size in order to maximize strength gains, right? Or at the very least, in order to help push somebody closer to their own strength potential and in a more well-rounded fashion, not just on one singular lift. And as it stands with someone like Jesse, we don't really see that well-roundedness, probably in large part because he's either deliberately or unwittingly held back gains in his body weight over these last few years. Instead, what we do see is a proficient and impressive deadlifter and a guy who's really kind of so-so everywhere else, at least from what I have seen on camera. So ultimately, this means that the logic that's being employed here, it has some holes in it. Yes, Jesse is almost certainly natural, and he has been able to stay relatively lean, in part because he was naturally lean to begin with, and he doesn't seem to have gained much body weight so far over the course of his training journey. And he has become strong, right? Lean, strong, natural. But strong in a very particular manner is the only thing that has been demonstrated so far. And this manner is kind of contingent upon the way that he's built. And therefore, this argument that Jeff is making here in this video, it really only potentially applies to a small subset of people who are also built that way. Which means that at the very least, most of you watching the video are not going to be able to get that same result by following that same roadmap that they've laid out. So now, am I saying go ahead and get fat just so that you can get strong? No, man, of course not. I mean, if you want to be fat because it's going to make you happy, then go ahead and get fat. I'm not stopping you. But I have been kind of hinting at the fact that what Jesse has done up to this point is actually somewhat specialized, perhaps more so than it seems from an external perspective. And that's because he has a few factors that are working in his favor, right? It's impressive as hell nonetheless, because 515 is a big pull no matter how you cut it, and he's obviously been working hard, but it is relatively segmented in its impressiveness. And so it's pretty iffy of Jeff to attempt to extrapolate that same thing onto the general population due to the aforementioned factors that I've already discussed. So with all that in mind, don't get fat, right? Fitness is never an excuse to get fat, right? Weight training is not a good excuse to get fat. But in the long run, you are going to see better overall results by, at a minimum, not deliberately holding back your body weight simply for the sake of making sure that your abs never get the tiniest bit blurry. What a lot of you are probably going to find is that as you start to build a little bit of strength and put in your adequate training volumes, that your body weight naturally wants to start to tick its way up, at least a little bit. And even if you're not deliberately eating a large caloric surplus. As well, being overly concerned about the tiniest bit of blur starting to appear in your six-pack is also its own slippery slope. When I was shredded at that time, I had gotten so enamored with being peeled, I basically fell in love with the veins in my lower abs, right? And even though I didn't necessarily force myself to get that lean in the first place, once I was there and liked whatever I liked about it, I started to do things that were suboptimal in order to try to maintain that state past a point where my body really wanted to be holding on to it, right? So then you go, you eat out, you eat in a restaurant, you eat a little bit more salt than you usually eat. All of a sudden your abs disappear the next day, because when you're that freaking lean, even holding on to just the tiniest amount of water, it creates a pretty drastic change in the visual appearance that you see in the mirror. And then that becomes a mind fuck, honestly. And it's not really a good thing to be continually obsessing about, in my opinion, as somebody who has been there. As well, it also cost me a fair amount of strength, right? Trying to hold that highly lean state for a long period of time, it cost me a lot of strength. I actually got significantly weaker during that time period. And I just figured this was worth mentioning because Jeff alludes, in his video, he alludes to the pitfalls of perma-bulking and the bad habits that can be formed there. Well, guess what? There are also major pitfalls to the other side of it, to perma-cutting or perma-shreddedness as well. Basically what I'm saying is, if you want to maximize your long-term fitness, and yes, strength and muscle mass are going to be a part of that, you can't be afraid of gaining weight. No, it's not an excuse to just get sloppy and fat, because maintaining overall fitness dictates that you don't let that happen, but you can't be afraid of weight either. Shredded abs are cool, but like the reality is that's really tough to keep. It's really hard to maintain that all the time. Getting there isn't really the hard part. It is holding it indefinitely that becomes the hard part. At least after maintaining a certain level of leanness becomes the goal that you're after. That's where you start to run into a deterioration of certain aspects of your fitness. And the other thing is, nobody else but you really gives a shit anyway. I can guarantee you that some chick that you're trying to bed does not notice the difference in your physique between when you're 10% versus 13% body fat. She doesn't notice or doesn't freaking care in reality. So if you're doing it, it's just for yourself. So with that, maintaining that level of leanness really better be the thing that truly makes you happy in life or makes you a lot of money, because ultimately it is going to come at a trade-off of other aspects of your overall fitness. So if you really want to make the best progress here in this game in the long run, you kind of ultimately need to gain pretty significant amounts of body weight, unless you're starting off heavier, decently heavier than you already should be anyway. And you can spread that body weight gain out over time, which is more similar to what I did, rather than trying to condense it all into a short period of time. And that way you're much less likely to gain excessive amounts of body fat along the way. But in the end, it really does need to happen. And that might mean that your abs need to take a back seat for a little while. But I think that the point that is going to be lost here with his video is that if you never gain significant amounts of weight in the first place, regardless of the time frame that you choose to do it over, fast or slow, but if you never do it, you're never going to be able to truly achieve the trifecta that they're talking about here, that lean, strong, natural trifecta. Because by and large, it is going to be a lot easier to gain that strength in the first place if you aren't obsessing over your abs the whole time, right? And then once you get there, anyone who carries muscle and is strong can easily get lean anytime that they choose to do so, unless they've made themselves obese, which really shouldn't even be something we have to talk about. That just shouldn't be something that you allow to happen. So even if you choose to achieve the goal by bulking, for lack of a better word, and getting big and strong, and then leaning out later down the road, that's kind of the classic approach, right? You still achieved the goal. You're still lean, strong, and natural at the end of the day. But the reality is you're probably bigger and stronger than you were going to be if you were always overly concerned about the precise level of chiseledness that your abs had on any given day along the way. A pitfall that I fell into myself for a period of time.
Why does leanness matter to you?
I like looking good and I like feeling good, because at my body fat level, I still feel really, really good.
And your body fat level is currently at what, like 10%?
I'd say about 10 to 11%. Yeah.
One other thing to keep in mind is that Jeff, on average, is also way, way leaner, substantially leaner than Jesse is in the photos that they showed. His dream physique of Arnold and the pictures that he showed in his video is going to be a level of leanness that would actually be detrimental for most people, especially ones who are natural. And that includes even somebody who's naturally lean, like Jesse is. People like that will start to experience strength loss, among potentially other things, if they were to try to get as lean as Jeff is now, as Jeff usually is, or as Arnold was in the pictures that they showed in those videos, because there's a big difference between being 10 to 12% body fat versus being a true single-digit body fat, that 7 to 9% range. And any lower than that is just fucking insane anyway. But that's kind of where you start to go from looking lean to just looking fucking peeled. And that's where somebody who can naturally hold that low level of body fat with zero detriment, that 10 to 12% range, people like that, they'll actually start to see and feel some of the problems with being ultra lean, excuse me, once they get into that 7 to 9% range. So if you weren't even blessed with that proclivity to begin with, then trying to essentially main gain from the 10 to 12% body fat range might just be an endeavor in futility for you, right? That's kind of where they were going. At least that's kind of where I felt that they were going in this video, was the concept of main gaining essentially from a relatively lean state, a 10 to 12-ish% body fat state. And worse, if you were to actually try to get into that single digit range, that's probably going to be a huge issue for you. That would entail degrees of muscle and strength loss that are simply not going to be a worthwhile trade-off, right? And without the use of drugs, it's also likely going to entail maintaining a level of dietary strictness or caloric restriction that's simply unfeasible for the long haul. So just keep that distinction in mind, please. You can't really compare Jeff's level of long-term leanness to Jesse's level of long-term leanness, because they're simply not the same beast at all. And I feel like that they were kind of being conflated, at least to an extent, in that video. So anyway, can you be lean, strong, and natural all at the same time? Sure, man, why the heck not? I've been there myself, but there are trade-offs to achieving ultra levels of leanness that everybody should be aware of. As well, going about achieving the goal in the first place, not the ultra leanness, but just the vague concept of becoming strong, lean, and natural that Jeff discusses in his video, is probably actually going to be better served by letting yourself get a little bit fluffier than Jeff kind of leads on over the course of his argument. It is really hard work to build significant amounts of muscle and strength, and calories are going to be your best friend when it comes to achieving that goal. It's just a physiological hard fact. So you're kind of hamstringing yourself when the obsession becomes equal parts let's get strong, but also let's always have chiseled abs, right? And if you can forego this concept for just a brief while, just delay that need for gratification by just a few years, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to build impressive strength and muscularity when you are fueling those efforts properly. And then it's after that going to be a lot easier to cut off a small amount of body fat in the end than it is going to be to build a significant amount of muscle, especially trying to build a significant amount of muscle while you're constantly shooting yourself in the foot. So you end up achieving the goal ultimately. You end up strong, lean, and natural, but in all likelihood, you are a lot bigger and a lot stronger by the time that you get there. If it's too long, didn't fucking watch. Basically, my fear is I think that people are going to hear this message and they're going to see the types of physiques that Jeff talks about in his video, and then they're just going to end up spinning their wheels for years and years, man, because now the message is, well, I'm supposed to be able to achieve all this while being lean, and if I can't, then I must have been doing something wrong, so I'm just going to keep spinning my wheels trying, right? Well, it could be that all that you were doing wrong is trying to stay too lean that whole time, when your progress might actually be better served by temporarily making that less of a concern. Anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. Let me know what you all think in the comments. I'm curious to hear what other people's experiences are with this process as well. I think that we all have something to learn here, and I think that we can all learn from each other by compiling our experiences together. Please remember to hit the like button before you go. Subscribe to my channel. Leave me some love in the comments. All that good stuff. Check out EnkiriEliteFitness.com for online training and online coaching and training programs. Sign up for my Patreon. I just dropped a new Q&A video this week. And keep training hard. I'll catch you guys next time.